program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is
All right, at 7:30, I'll call the meeting to order. Excuse me, the first order of the business is the minutes from the meeting of May 17, 2017. They were in your packet, and so I'll ask for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. No discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. Financial statements.
I do not see Josh here, so maybe I can just go through them. So for May, through May 31st, 2017, the RDA has operating expenditures of $1,407.31, and those were utility costs of properties that we own. There were no capital expenditures in the month of May.
All right, any questions or discussion on the financial statements as presented? I know they were in the packet too. Can I get a motion to approve, please?
So moved. Second.
Okay, moved and second to approve the financial statements as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Financial statements are approved. The fourth item is in addition to our agenda, motion to extend the July 1st, 2017 closing date of the sale of property at 1807 Oxford Avenue to Draft Beer LLC as per the development agreement dated February 23rd, 2017 for 60 days. Michael?
Yes, we received contact from Mr. Glass of Draft Beer LLC requesting an extension. He has yet to receive the federal permit that he needs. He doesn't anticipate any problem. It's just taken longer than he thought it would, and he would not like to close until he for sure has that. The city is also still working on some of our end of the attachments for the development agreement, and I met with Glenn Swanson this morning, our surveyor, to talk about the timing of when that would be ready. He meets with Real Land Surveying today at 9:30. He'll have a better idea, but he's guessing it's still about 2 weeks for that. So I did warn Mr. Glass that we cannot just close the next day after he gets the permit, that we need some time. He understands that. We'll keep working on our end of putting the attachments together that go with the development agreement. And he would like to close as soon as possible once he does get that. So as we both work together to get to the point where we can close, we'll do so in the most timely manner that we can.
Any questions or discussion on this, board? Seems to be a straightforward. Everybody just needs a little more time working with the government. May need that. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve that extension?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Moved and seconded to extend the closing date by 60 days. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same side? Okay. All right, a possible motion authorizing the chair to sign a MOU agreement and appoint a representative to an Economic Summit Task Force. Mike, you want to explain that, plus the fact we have one member who isn't here, so we need to appoint somebody? Okay, just wanted the board to know that.
Over the last several months, all of the groups that you see behind the MOU agreement there have been working towards...
Mike, would you explain what the MOU
Yes.
agreement is?
Okay. First, I'll do a little background about... This is part of an economic summit that came about for a couple of reasons. One, the city and county, who are the main funders of economic development, their normal funding sources have gone away. So one of the purposes of the summit was to look at a sustainable way of funding economic development in the future. And second of all, it was a time to take a look at how we do economic development and see if there were better ways or more logistics that would work, and examine that. So a group of about 25 to 30 people have been meeting regularly, both a combination of government and private sector people, to look at and examine how we're doing economic development. As an offshoot of that, it's been asked that we form a task force, a smaller group made up of those organizations and a representative from each and the executive directors of each to further the talk to see if we can come up with a sustainable funding mechanism. So the MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, just basically says that these groups are willing to continue those discussions to look at creative ways of funding economic development and the best ways of doing economic development, both from a city, county, and regional basis. Dale, I don't know if you wanted to add anything more to that?
All right, thank you. That was a good explanation. Any comments or questions anybody has on that?
Yeah.
Tom?
Marty's not here, so of course he didn't sign it. So Mike, I'm just wondering what type of time commitment are we potentially signing somebody up for here?
It looks like for, relatively soon till the end of the year. In the MOU, it states that they'd like to give a report to all of the organizations in January of 2018. So roughly a 6-month commitment, possibly.
When you say a 6-month commitment, how often would they meet and things like that?
I'm not quite sure on that, but I'm guessing maybe at least monthly.
All right. I'm kidding about Marty, unless nobody volunteers. Is there anybody on the board that would like to take a crack at this and say they'd like to do it? Somebody maybe that has a real great background in economics and things like that? Because this is about economics and sustainability, right? Is there anybody on the board that would fit that?
I think all of you.
All is. Thank you. Well done. Well done.
Again, do you have any idea times of the day, days of the week?
Catherine Shaw from the county is kind of the lead on this. She was not able to attend today. She had a prior commitment. Several of the organizations on there, the EDC, DECI, and the county have already approved participating, so it's starting to make the rounds of all the organizations.
Okay, obviously, I don't see anybody here that was going to say we don't want to participate. We definitely want to sign the MOU. The big thing is who would like to do it. Okay, Tom, you will? Sure. What a nice guy. Thank you so much. Let the record state that Tom will now do it.
Nice guy, too.
Nice guy. Cap that, please, would you? Thank you so much. And Marty has dodged yet another bullet.
And Tom, if it would conflict with your school schedule, your class schedule, I could potentially sit in for you on those days.
Perfect.
Mr.
Perfect.
Chair,
Please.
could I make a motion that that the RDA sign the agreement and appoint Dr. Kemp as a first and Ms. Wildenberg as a second to represent the RDA on this task force?
Okay, moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion on that? Thank you for formalizing that, Mr. Peters. All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. You are appointed. Okay, consideration of potential conceptual plans for Block 7. Michael?
Yeah, as we discussed at previous board meetings, we have hired SDS architects to look at some conceptual plans for Block 7. Mr. Peters and I have been meeting with them on a regular basis, and today we have 3 concepts for your review and discussion, and Mr. Hal Snow is here from SDS to kind of walk us through that.
Good morning.
Lay him here.
Perfect. There we go.
There's a Zoom here if you need to zoom in or out. Okay, right up right there.
How we doing? Everyone hear me okay?
So, the three options we're looking at really is a combination of a couple of things. One is there's some multifamily elements you're going to see, some retail elements. We're talking about a live-work piece, and then an office component, although kind of a small piece of that. And then surrounding with those are some varying degrees of green spaces, which, or some open spaces or interstitial spaces, we say in the architect community. And really the idea with how can we promote the growth of the urban or semi-urban fabric of downtown in a way that will promote business activity in a vibrant area. So if you look at the option A, really in this option you've got a couple of towers, and those could be 3 or 4 story residential here on the side. You've got a retail component that goes kind of down Barstow, and then on this, which is next to this parking ramp, you got kind of an interesting and I think a challenging. You've really got a 4-story wall right now of that ramp, and how do we create something there that is viable and will work and helps promote the goals that we're looking for this area. So right now on this scheme, you've got a 2-story office with a couple of stories of residential, and those could have direct access to that ramp. It also, it'd be great to have a grocer in that spot. Could also maybe have some parking in there as well for that, and then some retail on the side facing the river. And then if you turn the page on that one, you've got, we've been working with we pulled in Rettler, who's one of the landscaping company, to help work with us on this, and our site civil company. And they, this page 2 of this scheme kind of starts talking about what the green spaces can be around here. If you look at the photos, and they're kind of keyed. You can see image 1, 2, and 3 around the scheme here, and you can see where the ideas, and there's some photos on the side that really start talking about the ideas of the spaces and the urbanness of the scheme. So, in image 1, you've got really kind of, and I've got shared pedestrian street in the bottom here, and what does that street really start to look like? It really wants to promote some pedestrian. There's a really nice connection as you come down from the Oxbow. You come down that street, and you flow right into Phoenix Park, and then up to the farmers market, which is up on this side, as you can see and so there's something very nice. In this scheme, we actually were proposing maybe you actually take out the road in this corner, and this becomes kind of a green space, but you still maintain the access to the ramp and to the parking here. And then looking at, this live work. So this is a suggestion from Mike and Dale talking about what could this, there's a live work piece that we can work into this scheme that really starts to promote some entrepreneurial spirit, some small businesses, and how do we do that so that it's at a cost point that works for them as well. So you can see that element there, and then just the nature of, in image 3, the nature of the spaces that we might want to create for those retail elements. If you go turn to option B, please feel free to interrupt me at any time. Option B, you've got kind of on this option, you've got a similar option on the end for this building here, but we're really flanked the Barstow with some retail, and then you've got a retail tower, and then, residential space here, and then another residential building, but this has got live work on this side, so as you kind of walk down Galloway, you have a really different feel as you walk down there. You have these live work spaces, and I see these as very active. If you turn the page, you've got you can see what we're talking about here a little more on the spaces around that. There's like a small image. If you look at image 3, there's a playground or a park or plaza, and what might that start to be as well, and how can that promote the downtown or the urban feel of it? Turn again with me to option C. And on this option, we've got kind of a larger residential tower up here north. You've got some retail here, and then we've got these bunch of live work, kind of small individual live works properties that could be then sold and developed separately. And on this scheme, if you look at the pictures, and image 3, this is the kind of the live work, this is just one we've been looking at to try to characterize what this development may be. Here you've got a kind of a garage door situation. It might be really interesting where you can open that up, and then that work can really be kind of a shared, people could be walking down the road and interacting with those businesses, seeing what they're doing, kind of generate interest for their business, etc. Image 2, you've got kind of a picture of what that plaza could be. Maybe it could be kind of an urban plaza that might promote children or dogs or what have you. And then image one, again, just looking at the nature of how might we promote the sharing of the street with cars and people and dogs, and kind of have that be a little more urban feel to that. Anything else, Mike, you want to add to that?
I would just say that several of the concepts that we were trying to look at was, one, to make that Block 7 an inviting place where people could mingle and hang out. Look for kind of a hook, since you don't have a river there, so you're building in more green space and character along the roads and things like that. I think is something we wanted to do. We wanted to take advantage of the parking with the ramp being close to it. Wanted it to be inviting from Barstow Street all the way to Phoenix Park. So those are some of the things we were trying to tell SDS and Hal, take a look at those type of things to build it in. The other thing that I hear a lot about is the smaller businesses who would also would like to have some ownership. And that's been one of the things that have been lacking in downtown, is their ability to buy their own building or piece of land to build a building on. So in some of these designs, it shows a way that we might be able to let somebody build that wealth and get the ownership themselves.
You mentioned residential towers. Tell me how tall are you talking about?
So right here, and I've got it marked, it says 3 or 4 stories. Now, it could be 5. I mean, that would just need to be determined. In every scheme I forgot to mention, you can see a ramp that goes down to parking, and the extent of that parking underneath that kind of lot 7, would need to be determined based on the needs of the site. But that could easily be supported where and I'm showing some elevators and stair towers. You can see how that parking might come up, and you could access all those the businesses and the residential from that ramp. So you've got 3 or 4 stories there, and then you've got a couple of stories, which I think above that 2-story office component, you'd want something up there to help, kind of fill out that. And it's a really nice opportunity for some residential units to look out over the river up above there. So that could work nicely. And it's a tricky development, though. Who's going to come in and kind of build this I think this is more of a, Haymarket Landing type of development.
Could you give us some examples of the types of businesses that would go into those little fronts where you said, you could raise the garage door and look in? Can you give us some examples of what we would want to be attracting?
Sure. I mean, I think there's any number of arts businesses that might be interested. I could see Tim Brudnicki with Eau Claire Woodworks wanted to set up a shop over there if people can come by. And I don't know if you're familiar. He worked with, I was the architect of the Oxbow, and he did great, gorgeous woodwork over there. Any number of artists may be interested in some of that. From the small business standpoint, I don't know, Mike, any thoughts you've had on that?
I think that's right. A lot of the folks that are in that creative work of art, music, sculptures, things like that. I could see some more of the crafty type stores that we have downtown too being interested. Juicing place has been a need I've heard in the community, so little stores like that. But then again, they might also be able to live above it if they wanted to, or rent it out to help pay for the commercial space below it.
Board, any other questions?
I have a question. It looks like that if you have the street, it'd have to be one way.
On this one, no. This is a 2-way street.
It would be.
Yep, it's a full size street. So I don't know if the scale really. It's a 24 to 30 foot street. So it's a regular.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Michael, what are you asking the board to do? You want us to pick one of these, or just as an update to say, hey, this makes some sense to us?
Just some general direction on, do you think we're on the right track? Does any particular elements of each appeal to you? Any thoughts you have on what we should be concerned about with what we're looking at? Those general things. We don't have to make any set decision today.
Random thoughts, all right? Mike had mentioned to me a little while ago that they were looking at this, so I've had a chance to kind of look around for plans and things. And to me, a lot of this is going to turn on the live-work. And I think that I have not found many examples of new development where they've done it, but there are a couple that are close. And I think you have to build this site outward from what those plans are going to look like. In terms of the residential building. I mean, we can fit a residential
Yeah,
building.
that works, yeah.
So I'm going to operate off of, I'm not sure what it, Plan C, just for an example. So for better or worse, here are my thoughts of what's going to be important in the plan of the live work to pull it off. What I like about what you've done about Plan C is that they are not attached.
Right.
And I think if you make them attached with multiple buyers, and these are likely to be individuals or fairly, you know, it's a fairly complicated thing to build wall-to-wall with different owners, especially for what amounts to a single-family residence. So having a little separation, but keeping your urban look on the street.
The urbanness of it, yeah.
Yeah. Now, there is a project, an urban infill project or developer in Omaha who's done something close. And I don't know if you've seen it, but from the nods, I think you have. What their plans are very similar to what you've done here. They show garage to the back.
Right.
Sort of a storefront looking or office looking.
With some
traditional.
live above.
Yes. And then you have a stairway up and then 2 floors of residence.
Right.
And that, to me, works really, maybe that's what you had in mind when you did this. I think that would work really well.
Right.
You take care of the parking. You know, the garage can be whatever. It could be a shop or whatever, but it's also a parking. The front of it then becomes the office or
shop or whatever it is,
shop,
yeah.
or maybe with a bathroom, and then you go up the stairs and you have the living area. I like that because the risk is spread. You know, you could just
Right.
sell out, but you're going to have to, I think the RDA would need pretty tight control over the plans.
Right.
And through covenants or anything else.
CCNRs, right, exactly.
Yeah,
Yep.
it seemed to me that was a really good fit, and if that's what you also have in mind, I think if maybe we can get those pictures of what those look like, Mike, we can get you a link.
Yeah, I know the Omaha. I'm trying to remember. Do you remember the name of the developer?
No, I don't, but I saved the link at home. I should have printed it. I didn't. The other thing I think for city code and even building code, we all collectively have to give some thought in what the business is that's there.
Right.
I'm not thinking it's going to be a lot of retail. It might be some, but I think
We've-
what you're going to see is software developers and you know, more service things. That's their storefront, and I think that's okay. But whether you want to have any specificity in terms of the businesses that are permitted, because you're going to quickly get into the home occupation thing. I think also for.
What do you mean by that, Jeff? I'm sorry.
Well, the city now in an ordinance has what home occupations are permitted out of a dwelling. Is that what effectively this is? If the 2 spaces are separated?
You're talking about the
only by-
live-work situation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, giving some thought on the home businesses effectively that can be operated out of this environment would be, I think, time well spent. The plaza and everything else, I think, is very nice. I think you'd almost have to do underground parking for the main apartment building. But like I say, I think what could really distinguish the block is the live work. If we could pull it off.
I love it, yeah.
Yeah, I do too. I think it would be novel. I think it is a way to transition as some of the people living down here who are younger transition. It's a way for them to, you know, move into equity and stay in the area. And I just think it's a really creative solution. But the plan is going to be important.
Right.
So with that, I like C a lot. I think C is pretty close, primarily because of how the live work is structured. I think it seems to match what they did in the one example I found that was close.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I think it's very innovative and clever. The storefronts, you know, remind me, I like that. I think I mentioned it
Yeah.
years ago on this, and yeah, they're sort of ubiquitous in
Yeah.
many parts of the world, right? Things like this remind me of the other places I've seen them, and generally they're younger families, right? And so that I like the idea of the sort of playground and small park back there. There's not a lot of places for kids downtown, you know. There's Phoenix Park, but that's not really for sort of people in general, right? I think if you have younger families that are running smaller businesses, that could be attractive. Place basically in what's functionally the backyard,
Right.
and which is fairly, you know, not overly guarded, which could cause other problems, but is somewhat guarded from broader elements. I'm thinking
Right.
like cars and
Right.
higher speed traffic and things like this. I think that could be good. I do think the separation works, you know, just as Jeff was just mentioning, separation, I think that makes sense culturally. People are gonna want that. Those are my only comments.
Thank you.
And I think in my discussions with Mike and Dale real quick is, you know, the retail's limited, so we've been, you know, it's a limited situation, at least right now. Now in 2 years, if that turns around, maybe there's a lot more, but for now it seems that's a limited situation.
My sense is that's right. My sense is this is probably kind of the tip of the spear of the changing economy, though.
Right.
You know, to the extent this is eBay, retail, it might be eBay sellers.
Right.
You know,
Could
stuff-
be, yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
Things like that.
Yeah.
And so making that front adaptable. The other thing I wasn't sure how you solve, if it's a true storefront, how to get access for ADA. A lot of the other plans I'm seeing look like a residence, meaning they've got steps. I don't see how you provide the handicapped access. I don't know.
You know, I can think of any number of situations where that could work. I think it's a great comment that we're sensitive to that, but I don't see that as a particularly difficult challenge, at least from my standpoint. But
it's probably my age speaking, but I think that having Galloway connect Hobart is going to be, I think we need to keep that street.
Keep the connection.
All the way to the corner. Especially, you know, I mean, if we continue in the direction of option C with those live-work units there, it would have to, but I think even without that, I think that the street connecting would be important. But that's just me.
I agree with you.
I have a question on the live-work development. Would you have a developer building all of them and then selling them, or how would you have one built? How would that go?
Yeah, we've talked about that as a staff, and I've talked to a couple of developers about it. It is trickier if you allow them to do it each individually. So I have talked to a few developers that would offer to be would be interested in talking about being the lead developer, where they might build an initial model, if you would, to kind of show what this would be, and then let others build, or they could build it themselves and then just sell it off. So I think either way might work. If we go the route of letting the individuals, it'll probably take longer, be more time-consuming, more hand-holding, that sort of thing. So I think we want to really talk that through, get the costs, of course, to see what all this would entail and everything, and then make a decision once we have all that information.
Any other questions? Okay, good presentation. I think moving forward, Michael, can the link that Jeff spoke of with Omaha, if you could throw that around everybody. And then can we ask then that our next meeting, or whether or not it's 30 days, maybe it's 60, that we could get some more specifics on this? I think the board agrees that the direction is right on this. And so it's got some legs as far as we're concerned. But let's take a look at some of those cost components and some of the other things that you've heard today. Is that fair enough?
I think so. Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay. The next
Mr.
item.
Chair?
Excuse me.
Just maybe one other thing I could suggest. I was able to quickly look up on Mr. Halloran's point, and I think it's well taken. I think in terms of home occupation, I mean, I understand the concept is there. That conditional use applies to residentially zoned districts, and this is commercial, central business district, I presume. So I think that mix is permitted, but either a presentation by Daryl Tufte or a review, by him so we understand. I think it'd be permitted and probably under a CBD and then planned. Ray's here, Mr. French too, so he might have some immediate comments or thoughts on it, but otherwise, that would be my thought of likely how planning would handle that. In addition, especially if we have a single developer, which I think would be easier and preferable, you could then do it through restrictive covenants in that development agreement that they pass on to buyers.
Yeah, the other thing, Steve, you might want to think about is if you do, especially with a single developer, but maybe either way, do you want the equivalent of a homeowners association afterward to bind those units together? Because you've got some common area plazas and other things to fund here. So you might have to do it that way. And again, I think it's if you search urban dwellings in Omaha, I think you can pull it up. The plan they're doing right now, and this is a single developer, they're just building it, they've done both attached and detached. They seem to be doing duplexes right now, side-by-side row houses that are two units attached, and then down you go. But again, that's the closest that I saw, and it fits really well with this concept, I thought. Very good.
All right, thank you.
Just one other thought. When we were first looking at something, there was a curvilinear component to one of the pictures that I remember looking at. Does that drive the cost of a building to have something other than a rectangular building?
Hal, do you know the answer to that?
What was the question again? I'm sorry.
In some of the pictures, it had more of the, like the curve and stuff. Does that cost additional costs because of the uniqueness?
I mean, most of the schemes, we keep it kind of rectilinear. I added some angle for interest. Whether or not they're squared off, is there a little bit of an angle on there? I think, you want to build in some architecture for these kind of urban sites, but they could be just straight up squares or rectangles as well. It really would depend on the nature of it.
I want to go the other way.
If we added
with a curved front.
Sure.
Does that drive the
Not
cost
necessarily. I mean, I think there's, all the contractors tell you that definitely it's more expensive, but we do curves all the time. I think you just plan it in, and it doesn't have to drive the cost really that in a significant way necessarily.
I think a little diversity in downtown architecture wouldn't be a bad thing.
Yep.
So that's just my.
Agreed.
I was in Missoula, Montana last week, and we were walking the downtown, and there was the neatest residential building that had, it came to a point, and it was like old copper type materials around the whole building, and then the inland part of it as you got into it was curvy and just neat little balconies and everything, but it was more like this. It was a little different. It stood out from everything else, but yet it seemed to fit in that cool nature of what's going on in their downtown too.
Very good. Thank you again. Any other comments? Michael, Executive Director's report.
So one of the things that we're working on is the final funding of the cannery district, and it's proposed in the CIP budget to give us funding to acquire the properties that we haven't. So we're talking about, here's Madison Street, here's Platt where it takes the turn. So most of these properties right in this area are owned by Mr. Kaiser, Jack Kaiser, and then there's the Hill Tax building there. And then right here are the duplexes owned by Steinmetz. So those are the remaining properties. So what we're proposing is to go ahead and get bids on environmental on those properties and do the phase one. Once we have the bids, we would of course take the lower bid and come back to you. Depending on what the phase one show, if there's no need for phase two, then we would move to the appraisal part. So in July, the CIP gets voted on, and then in the city budget, the appropriation for funds for 2018. So most of these acquisitions would be then tried to fit in under the 2018. The one building I want to keep an eye on, though, is if Mr. Glass does leave the building he's in now, it might be conducive if we have the funding to do that this year, just so that nobody else goes into the building and we can save some relocation. So I've talked to Christine in our finance department. We'll watch that one. But I've talked to Mr. Kaiser. He's given us the approval to move forward with the environmental. So Christine will start getting bids for that, and kind of that's the process here on the Cannery District. Any questions on that part? Okay.
Is there still ongoing discussion with Family Video?
There's attempts to, yes. If you remember, we were talking to Family Video about either them doing an urban development as a developer themselves, or potentially selling it if they didn't want to do that. So those are the discussions we're having to see if they would have some interest in that, but as of yet have not been able to sit down with them. I have other things, but I won't need to stand up here.
We'll give you a couple seconds to get back.
So we have met with a couple of developers that have expressed interest in the Cannery District. So we're working on putting together the information they would need to take a serious look at it, and keeping them up to date on what our process is here. You may see that there's some clearing going on now along the riverfront, and then later this summer the trail will be going in. We had WEDA, Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority, put on a multifamily training class a couple weeks ago here in Eau Claire, and they did a tour of the Cannery District, and on that tour were several developers too. So Ryan Petrie from our department was able to be on that tour and describe what our vision is for that area. So we got some good exposure to some developers that way too. And then there is some interest in doing some public art on the parking ramp in the North Barstow District. So we may be coming back to you for just some access to allow something to happen there. So just kind of a heads up on that. Any questions? Or?
That's a perfect segue. We kind of touched on the area just this side of the parking garage where the ice rink was. And is there any updates on that property, or is that sort of just getting lumped into this Block 7 development?
Yeah, it's one of our main marketing attempts right now, Block 7 and the Liner site, and we've engaged in several talks with different developers, and we had one pretty solid potential that ended up deciding not to do that. So it's a main priority of ours to keep working on that site.
I just wanted to thank the authority for their wisdom in selecting me for participation in the Health Impact Assessment Project. That's completed now, and we'll be getting a report, I think, in a month or so. But I think the final outcome of that will be of benefit to the community and to us in terms of how we look at future development and redevelopment projects. So thank you.
Our pleasure, and thank you for serving. Did you miss a meeting that you were appointed? No, you
No, I
volunteered.
did
Thank you.
not.
Thank
I
you.
was in attendance at every one.
Okay, any other comments, Michael? No. All right, we'll go to point 8. Excuse me. I'm sorry, Steve.
Excuse me, I have one too. I got a request from legal counsel for Haymarket Concepts. They are doing bond financing, long-term financing for that project, and there's a request for a confirmation from the RDA that I'm just making aware of. I'll ask the chairman to sign after the meeting. It really just confirms that that project is within a redevelopment authority, that we've established a redevelopment district and a redevelopment plan, and that the project is in keeping with that. I find all those to be accurate, and just wanted to make the board aware, and that I was looking for your signature on that document after the meeting. If there's
Okay.
any other questions, happy to answer them.
All right, we don't need a vote on that. I mean, it's just standard procedure.
I certainly would accept one authorizing you to sign it. I don't know that it's necessary, but there's nothing wrong with it if the board would like to confirm that.
Anybody want to make a motion on that? If it's not absolutely needed, then,
So moved.
okay, so moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same side. So I'll get out my pen after the meeting. Okay, I'll scan again. Any other questions? Michael, any announcements, directions, correspondence, fan mail?
Yes, you have a letter in front of you that we received from the United States Environmental Protection Agency declining our third attempt at funding for the some remedial action and such along the Cannery District, but also the way it was worded in the grant is it could have been used anywhere in our city. My take on why we're being turned down is that there isn't a real project ready to go in there. The good news is that EPA did fund the Menominee Street project this year, so the city of Eau Claire did end up receiving federal funding for something. AIRS has been reapplying for us free of charge after we paid them for the first submittal, so not sure if we'll continue submitting or not, but just wanted to give you that correspondence.
Okay. All right. Then, our next meeting is the 19th of July. Am I correct on that?
That's correct.
Okay. Very good. Any other business to be brought before the board? If not, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the City of Eau Claire. A transcript of this meeting is available for the hearing impaired. It will be available within 7 days of this telecast. Call 715-839-4912 or TDD 715-839-1689 or write Eau Claire City Clerk, P.O. Box 5148, Eau Claire, Wisconsin 54702-5148. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715